The New Map, Chapter 25, Belt and Road Building. Nur Sultan, formerly Astana, the capital of the Central Asian country of Kazakhstan, is a partly new city. In Soviet times, the old section, beaten down by the harsh winters and the bitter winds that swept down from Siberia, had yet another name, Zelenograd. It languished as a backwater until chosen as the new capital of the newly independent Kazakhstan. Today the city is, in its new parts, a flash of light, futuristic metropolis with soaring buildings designed by world-famous architects, all made possible by the rising oil revenues that have flowed into Kazakhstan since it became independent in 1991. Of all the Central Asian countries, Kazakhstan has worked the hardest to integrate itself into the global economy. It has established the Astana International Financial Center, governed by British commercial law, to be the financial hub for Central Asia. Kazakhstan also has oil, by far the most of any of the Central Asian republics, and as a result is the wealthiest of them. In 2013, Chinese President Xi Jinping came to the city to deliver a major speech at Nazarbayev University as part of the university's mission to connect Kazakhstan with the world. All the classes are taught in English. In his speech, Xi Jinping unveiled China's new map for the world economy, One Belt, One Road, in which China, historically known as the Middle Kingdom, would become the middle of a to-redraw world's economy. The program would tie China together with all the Eurasia, the continents of Europe and Asia seen as one vast entity through infrastructure, energy, investment, communications, politics, and culture. Subsequently, the realm that Xi identified would be broadened to include the Middle East and Africa. China would be the engine of development, the partner of choice, the lead financier, the promoter, and the grand strategist. On that day, Xi summoned a figure from an annal of history, Zhang Qian, who in the 2nd century BC had been the Han dynasty's special envoy to Central Asia. After enduring 10 years of imprisonment by a nomadic tribe, Zhang was able to get back to China and report to the emperor about the potential value of trade with the heretofore unknown West. Now, more than 2,000 years later, President Xi grew poetic, even mystical. As I stand here and look back to that episode of history, I could almost hear the camel bell echoing in the mountains and the wisp of smoke rising from the desert. Zhang Qian's report marked the beginning of the development of trade routes that ran to the west, first to Central Asia and Persia, and then, at least intermittently, as far as the Roman Empire. This transcontinental trade route had no particular name. Only in 1877 was it dubbed die Seidenstrasse, the Silk Road, by Baron Ferdinand von Richthofen, a German geologist and geographer who had been dispatched to China to scout mining opportunities and a possible route for a railroad to Europe. He chose Silk Road because one of its trades was driven by the passion for Chinese silk on the part of ancient Romans, at times, apparently, overly passionate for silk, was criticized by a Roman senator for promoting adultery by revealing women's bodies too explicitly. The Silk Road was not a single road, but rather a series of trails and paths around the Tlaxcala Desert, leading often perilously from the oasis town to another and then over forbidding mountains. But for thousands of years it served as an extraordinary conveyance for goods, from silk and spices to leather goods and musical instruments, and for culture, people, religion, and vocabulary. By this route the invention of paper made its way westward, first used for wrapping, and only later for writing. And now, in Kazakhstan, in 2013, she described Beijing's grand plan as the New Silk Road. A month after the Astana speech, she, in front of the Indonesian parliament, introduced the second part of the new strategy. This time he recalled the spirit of the three-jeweled eunuch, the 15th century Admiral Zheng, whose voyages had touched down in what is today Indonesia, before sailing on the western seas, leaving many stories of friendly exchanges, said she, many of which are still widely told today. And now, he said, China would work with Southeast Asian countries to build the maritime Silk Road of the 21st century. The Chinese have shortened One Belt, One Road in English to the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative. In Chinese, the nuance is a little different. Belt and Road Strategy. In truth, it is both an initiative and a strategy. For simplicity, it is often just called Belt and Road or just BRI. And as it has come to be a concept applied to projects around the world, it has also become an all-encompassing brand. And since the breakup of the Soviet Union in 1991, major advances have been made in Central Asia in highway systems, rail connections, and air transport. But by far, the biggest international investment has gone into the large oil and gas resources and into the pipeline to carry those resources to the world market. As China's energy needs grew rapidly in the century, access to Central Asian energy moved up the priority list. Turkmenistan, with abundant natural gas resources, became the largest gas exporter to China. In Kazakhstan, Chinese companies represent about 20% of the country's oil output. A 1,400-mile pipeline from the Caspian shore of western Kazakhstan carries oil across the country to China, making Kazakhstan an important source of diversification for Beijing. Beyond energy, China had a very specific security interest in Central Asia. Its large Xinjiang region in the northern shares borders with Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan, as well as with Afghanistan and Pakistan. Strengthening relations with these neighbors would help control the East Turkestan Islamic movement, a violent jihadist group that was affiliated with and provided jihadists to other Central Asian and Middle East extremist groups. The Xinjiang region includes the Tarim Basin, which is one of China's main domestic sources of oil and gas, and where the Uyghurs, a Muslim Turkic people, have traditionally been the dominant ethnic group, though with Kazakhs and other groups, and now with many Han Chinese as well. In Xinjiang, the Han are now at least 40% of the population, up to 6 texts on that left scores that Beijing has cramped down with great severity. It has established large camps of Uyghurs and other Muslims, holding perhaps as many as 1 million people. Chinese officials describe them as education and training centers. Critics describe them differently as mass incarceration and indoctrination. These camps have become a focus of controversy and stimulated much international protests. After the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill calling for sanctions and restrictions on transactions with Chinese companies involved in the region, the Foreign Ministry in Beijing denounced the bill as gross interference in China's internal affairs and said that China's policy is about fighting violence, terrorism, and separatism, and advancing de-radicalization. This campaign, along with Beijing's new security system for Hong Kong and the continuing rancor over the novel coronavirus, adds further strength to China's relationships with the United States and other Western countries. Belt and Road is focused on energy, infrastructure, and transportation, with an overall potential investment estimated about $1.4 trillion, a scale never before seen and at least 7 times larger measured in today's dollars than the Marshall Plan, the U.S. initiative to rebuild Europe after World War II. It is not just physical goods that China is seeking to export to Eurasia and the world beyond. It is also aspects of China's own economic model. Infrastructure investment has served for decades, and an economic growth engine for the country's development, which can be revved up when growth appears to be waning. An initial impetus for Belt and Road was the expectation, following the global financial crisis, for slower global economic growth for China. Development in Eurasia would stimulate growth, create new markets for Chinese industries suffering from extensive overcapacity, support jobs in China, and create new opportunities for Chinese firms.